James opened his eyes, wincing at the sharp pain shooting through his body. His surroundings were unfamiliar, the bright lights above blurring his vision. He blinked, trying to focus, but the world seemed hazy. The air smelled sterile, cold, and metallic. His limbs felt heavy, like they weren't his own, and he struggled to lift his arm. The beeping of machines and the soft hum of machinery were the only sounds in the room. Where am I? His mind struggled to piece things together. The last thing he remembered was the crash, the violent explosion of his shuttle as it collided with an unknown object. The crew had been thrown into chaos. Some had died instantly, while others, like James, had been gravely injured. He had lost consciousness right after, feeling his body torn apart by the impact. But now he was here. Where was here? The lights above flickered slightly as a figure moved into his field of view. He tried to focus, but everything was still blurry. The figure was tall, their features indistinct. The person stepped closer, revealing a face that was both alien and strangely beautiful. A soft glow radiated from her skin, a pale blue that shimmered in the dim light. Her large, dark eyes studied him with an intense focus. "Welcome back," the voice said, soft and melodic. "You've been unconscious for several hours." "How do you feel?" James opened his mouth, but no words came out. His throat felt dry and scratchy, as if he hadn't spoken in days. He swallowed painfully, trying to gather his thoughts. The woman, an alien nurse, reached for a small device at her waist and pressed it against his wrist. She didn't seem to notice his confusion or the way he tried to shift in the bed, still struggling to regain control of his body. "Your vitals are stable," she said, her tone reassuring. "You should be recovering well, given the circumstances." James tried to speak again, his voice raspy but steady enough this time. Where am I?" The nurse's lips curled into a faint smile, though her eyes were serious.
"You're on Zonara, a medical facility run by the Zonari."
"We found you after the crash. Your injuries were severe, but we've stabilized you." Zonara? That name didn't mean anything to him. He was sure he had never heard of it before. The realization hit him suddenly. His shuttle had been on an exploration mission, but they hadn't been heading anywhere near this part of the galaxy. "You're safe now," the nurse continued, her voice calm and steady. "We have the best medical technology in the galaxy, and we've used it to treat your injuries. You should feel better in no time." James tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. He gritted his teeth, frustration building. He could barely move his arms or legs. The pain was still there, but it wasn't as intense as before. There was something else, too. Something odd. What did you do to me?" James asked, his voice trembling slightly. The nurse's expression softened, but she didn't answer right away. Instead, she placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You've been given a regenerative treatment," she said. "It's a medicine meant to heal injuries quickly. It wasn't meant for humans, but we've adapted it to your biology. It's a powerful healing agent." James blinked, trying to make sense of her words. Medicine meant for humans? He couldn't understand. He felt something inside him shifting, something he couldn't explain. His body felt stronger, more alive than it should be after such an injury. "You should have died," the nurse said softly, almost as if she was speaking to herself. "This medicine wasn't for humans." Her words sent a chill through him, and he stared at her, confusion and fear mixing together. He was about to ask her what she meant when a strange wave of dizziness swept over him. His vision blurred, and he felt like the room was spinning. The nurse stepped back, watching him closely, her eyes calculating. "Don't worry," she said. "You're just adjusting to the medicine. It's powerful, and your body is reacting differently. It will take some time to fully understand what it's doing to you." James tried to focus, his mind racing as he absorbed her words. His body was changing, and he couldn't stop it. He didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but everything about this felt wrong. The nurse remained silent, watching him carefully. She didn't seem worried, but her gaze was filled with something he couldn't place. Was it pity? Curiosity? He wasn't sure. What kind of place is this?" James finally asked, his voice strained. "This is a medical facility," the nurse said, her tone clinical. "The Xonari are known for our healing abilities. We've saved many lives, and we've shared our medical knowledge with others when necessary. But this treatment was never intended for humans. It's a wonder you survived it." James didn't know what to say. He could barely process everything she had told him. He had been saved by aliens, and now they were experimenting with his body using a medicine that wasn't meant for him. The realization of how fragile his existence had been and how much control these beings had over him made him feel small. He hated the feeling. But there was something else, too. He could feel it deep within himself. The medicine was doing something to him. Something he didn't fully understand. His senses were sharper now, his thoughts clearer, and his body felt different. He was stronger than before, more aware. He could feel his heart beating faster, more powerfully. It wasn't just healing him. It was transforming him. The nurse noticed the change in his expression and nodded to herself. "You may feel strange for a while," she said, "but rest assured, you are recovering. The effects of the medicine will become clearer soon. However, we must monitor you closely to ensure that it does not cause any permanent damage." James didn't respond immediately. He felt a mixture of awe and fear rising within him. He had no idea what these aliens had done to him, but it was clear that whatever it was powerful. Maybe too powerful. As he lay there, unable to move, unable to fully understand what was happening to him, the nurse gently squeezed his hand.
"You will be okay," she said, her voice oddly reassuring. "You're just not human anymore."
Not entirely. The words echoed in James's mind, and a cold chill swept through him. What had they done to him? And what would happen next? James awoke again, but this time the world seemed clearer. The haze from before had lifted, and his senses were sharper. Now he could hear the faint hum of machinery from other rooms, the distant sound of voices in an unknown language, and the soft shuffling of feet. His body felt stronger. He flexed his fingers and felt the power in his hands. The dull aches and pains from his injuries were gone, replaced by a strange vitality. The alien nurse, Jira, was sitting beside his bed when he opened his eyes. She was still calm and composed, her gaze focused on a small device in her hand. James took a deep breath, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. He tried to sit up, and to his surprise, his body responded with ease. The stiffness that had plagued him earlier was gone. He felt lighter, almost like he could jump out of bed and run across the room. But he held back, still unsure about what had happened to him. Zyra looked up from her device, her eyes studying him carefully. "You're awake again. How do you feel?" James tried to speak, but his voice was still a little hoarse. "Better. Stronger." He swallowed, still amazed at how different his body felt. "What did you do to me?" Zyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she placed the device down on the bedside table and stood up. She walked over to a nearby counter, her movements smooth and precise. There was something almost graceful about her, as if every step was calculated, deliberate. "The treatment we gave you is something we've used on our own people for centuries," she said, her voice soft but firm. "It's meant to heal the most severe wounds, repair broken bones, regenerate damaged cells. But, as I said before, it wasn't meant for humans. The medicine was designed for the Anari, not for a species like yours." James felt a strange discomfort in his chest. He was getting tired of hearing that it wasn't meant for humans. Every time Jira said it, He was reminded of how much he didn't belong here, how fragile his body must be compared to the advanced races he was now surrounded by. Yet, he couldn't ignore the growing strength inside of him. He could feel the change, and despite the unease, a part of him felt exhilarated by it. "Why didn't it kill me?" he asked, his voice quiet, but filled with curiosity. "You said this medicine wasn't for humans. Why didn't I die?" Zyra paused and turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "That is something we do not fully understand. You should have died from the initial shock of the medicine entering your body. Your biology is vastly different from ours, but your cells, they adapted to it. Somehow, your human DNA found a way to survive." James was quiet for a moment, processing her words. The more he learned, the less he understood. He had no idea what had happened to him, but he could feel it. Something inside of him was changing. "I can feel it," he said softly. "I can feel the difference." Zyra nodded. "You're experiencing the early stages of the medicine's effect. It enhances your body's natural healing abilities, but it also strengthens your physical capabilities. Your senses will become more acute, and your strength will increase. We've seen this happen with the Zonari, but not with humans." James clenched his fist, testing the strength in his hand. The muscles in his arm flexed easily, with a strength he hadn't had before. He wondered if he could lift something heavy, or if he could run faster than he ever had. His thoughts raced, and the possibilities felt endless. But then, a chill ran through him. What happens if I can't control it? What if I become something else? Something I'm not? Zyra stepped closer, her voice softening. "That's why we are here to help you. We'll monitor your progress, ensure that you don't lose control. But the transformation you're going through is beyond anything we've ever seen with a human. You may become stronger, faster, but you will still be human at your core. It is up to you to decide how you use this power." James swallowed, unsure of whether he wanted the power. He had always been a man of reason, a scientist at heart, not a warrior or a hero. The idea of becoming something different, even powerful, terrified him. But at the same time, he could feel the lure of it, the strength, the speed, the clarity of thought. There was a part of him that wanted to explore this new side of himself, to see just how far he could go. As if reading his thoughts, Zyria gave him a small smile. "You're thinking about it, aren't you? Wondering what it's like to be something more than human. It's natural. The medicine is designed to push the boundaries of what your body can do, but you must remember, this power is not without its costs." James's mind raced. "What kind of costs?" Jira's gaze grew more intense. "The longer you remain on this path, the more your human traits may fade. Your biology will adapt to the medicine, but at what cost to your humanity? You'll have to make choices, James. The more you rely on the power the medicine gives you, the harder it will be to go back to the person you were." The weight of her words hit James like a hammer. He had never considered that he might lose his humanity in exchange for power. It seemed like an impossible decision, but now it felt all too real. He was caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Before he could respond, the door to the room slid open, and another figure entered. This one was tall, with silver blue skin and piercing eyes. The figure looked like a male version of the Zonari, but James couldn't tell if this was a member of the same race or another alien entirely. The newcomer's presence was commanding, and there was something about him that made James feel small, like he was being measured. Zyra turned to face the newcomer. "This is Commander Talon. He is in charge of overseeing your recovery." Talon's eyes studied James for a moment before he spoke, his voice deep and controlled. "I've been briefed on your condition. You seem to be adjusting well to the treatment. However, we must be careful. The Vreks have been growing restless. They've taken notice of our research, and we cannot afford to have any information about this medicine fall into their hands." James's eyes widened. The Vrex? Who are they? Talon stepped forward. The Vrex are a hostile species from the Outer Rim. They are known for their aggression and their desire to control the most advanced technologies. If they learn about the regenerative medicine, they will do everything in their power to seize it. James's heart raced. He had barely recovered from his injuries, and now he was being thrust into a conflict he didn't fully understand. What do you want me to do about it? Talon's gaze hardened. We need you to be ready. The Vrex may attack at any moment. With your new abilities, you could be an asset to us in defending this facility. But we cannot force you into action. This is your decision. James felt a weight settle on his chest. He wasn't a soldier. He had never been trained for combat, but now with the power coursing through him, the idea of standing by while others fought seemed impossible. He was stronger than he had ever been, and if the Vrex were as dangerous as Talon said, maybe he could help. Maybe he could be the one to stop them. But was he ready to embrace this new power? Was he willing to sacrifice his humanity to become something else? Something alien? Zyra's voice broke through his thoughts. You don't have to decide right now. But remember, every choice you make from here on will shape your future, and you'll need to decide what kind of person you want to be. James sat silently for a long moment, the weight of her words pressing down on him. The Vrex were coming, and whether he was ready or not, he would have to make a choice that would change everything. James stood in front of the window, staring out at the alien landscape beyond. The view was breathtaking. Strange, vibrant plants that seemed to glow in the dim light, mountains with peaks that stretched impossibly high, and vast fields that seemed to go on forever. It was a beautiful world, and for the first time since his crash, James allowed himself to breathe without the constant fear of death or injury. He had been healed, and now he was strong, stronger than he had ever been. But as he gazed out at the unfamiliar world, the weight of the decisions ahead loomed over him like a dark cloud. His body had changed. It was undeniable. His muscles were denser, his senses sharper, and his reflexes quicker. He could hear a pin drop across the room now, and he could smell the faintest traces of alien flowers in the air, their scent carried by the soft breeze outside. The side effects of the regenerative medicine were undeniable. Yet there was an unsettling feeling inside him, a deep, nagging question that he couldn't shake. Was he still human? Zyra had told him that the longer he relied on the power coursing through his body, the more he risked losing his humanity. It was a terrifying thought, one that made him feel like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, with nothing but the unknown below. He didn't want to lose himself, but he also couldn't deny the strange pull that the new abilities had over him. His body felt alive in ways it had never felt before, and the power was intoxicating. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Zyra entering the room. She moved with the same grace she always did. Her eyes focused on him with the same intensity. She had become a constant presence in his recovery, always there when he needed her, yet always distant in a way that left him wondering about her true thoughts. Her care was genuine, but there was something about her that James couldn't quite place. She wasn't like the other Zonari. She was different, but how? He didn't know. You're quiet today, she said, her voice soft but firm. James turned back to the window. Just thinking about everything. The Vrex, this power, my humanity. His voice trailed off, and he shook his head, unsure of how to explain it. Zyra studied him for a long moment before walking over to stand beside him. She was silent, letting the weight of his words sink in. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, though there was a hint of concern in it. You are stronger now, she said slowly. That is true, but strength does not define who you are. The Vrex, the battles ahead. They will test you, yes, but you must not lose sight of what makes you human. James looked at her, confused. But what does that even mean? I'm not sure what's left of my humanity anymore. My body feels different. My mind too. The more I use this power, the more I start to feel detached from who I was. I don't know if I can just walk away from this strength, especially with the Vrex coming. Zyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer to him, her presence comforting yet intense. I understand your fear, she said softly, but power is not inherently evil. It is how you choose to use it that defines you. The Vrex will not hesitate to destroy what they cannot control. You have the ability to stop them, but the question is whether you will use that power to protect others, or whether you will let it consume you. James's mind raced. He could feel the power building inside him, just beneath the surface. His muscles twitched with the desire to test his limits, to see just how far he could push himself. He could feel the strength in his legs, the speed in his hands, the clarity in his thoughts. He could do so much. He could be so much. But was it worth it? Was it worth risking everything just to stop the Vrex? He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained for this. I don't know if I'm the right person for this, James admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm just a scientist. I was never meant to be a hero. I was never meant to fight. Zyra's eyes softened, and she placed a hand on his arm. You don't have to be a soldier to fight for what's right. You've already shown courage by coming here, by surviving the medicine's effects. You have a strength that many do not. But your true test will be whether you can hold onto your humanity while wielding this power. James felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that he could rise to the occasion, that he could use this power to protect others, to save the Zonari from the Vrex. But what if it wasn't enough? What if he lost control, became something he couldn't recognize, something alien to himself? What if I fail? He asked, his voice shaking slightly. Zyra gave him a small, reassuring smile. The only failure is in giving up before you try. There is no perfect path, James. Only choices. You can choose to let fear control you, or you can choose to fight for what you believe in. James turned back to the window, looking out over the alien world once more. The wind blew softly, carrying with it the scent of something sweet and unfamiliar. The Xenari planet was beautiful, peaceful, and full of life. But the Vrex were coming, and that peace would be shattered unless he acted. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, letting the weight of the decision settle within him. There was no turning back. The Vrex would not wait, and neither could he. He had a choice to make, and he knew that whatever decision he made would change the course of his life forever. You're right, James said, his voice steady now. I can't run from this. If I'm going to use this power, then I have to do it for something bigger than myself. I have to protect these people, protect this planet. I won't let the Vrex destroy everything. Zyra nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and something else. Something softer. Then we are not so different after all. James looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure what she meant, but in that moment, he felt a connection to her that went beyond their differences. They were both fighting for something they believed in, and for the first time since his crash, James didn't feel quite so alone. The decision had been made. The Vrex were coming, and he would fight to protect this world, this people, and whatever humanity he had left inside him. But as he stood there looking out over the strange world, he couldn't shake the feeling that something inside him was changing, something that would be harder to stop the longer he waited. In the distance, he could see the faint outline of a ship approaching. Too fast, too determined. The Vrex were already here. James stood at the edge of the observation deck, his heart racing as he watched the Vrex ship approach. It was large, dark, and imposing, its silhouette cutting through the sky like a predator hunting its prey. The Vrex were here, and they weren't just a threat to the Zonari. They were a threat to everything he had come to care about since his crash. He felt the strange, uncomfortable energy coursing through his body, the heightened senses, the power that had become a part of him since the alien medicine had been injected into his system. Zyra stood beside him, her expression unreadable, but he could feel her gaze on him. She had been a steady presence in his life since he woke up on this planet. Her calm, her intelligence, her quiet strength. It had all been a source of comfort. But now, as the wrecked ship drew closer, there was a tension between them, something unspoken but undeniably present. The Xenari were depending on him, and deep down he knew that this battle would test not just his body, but his mind and spirit. "I didn't think they would come this soon," James said, his voice tight with both anger and fear. Zyra didn't reply at first. She was watching the ship, her eyes narrowed. The Vreks are unpredictable. They are not like other species. They are ruthless and efficient. Once they know something is valuable, they will stop at nothing to get it. James nodded, clenching his fists. The power he had gained since his injuries felt both like a blessing and a curse. He wasn't sure how to control it yet, and the fear of losing himself to it made his chest tighten. He didn't want to become someone he didn't recognize, someone who used their strength without thinking, but there was no turning back now. The Vreks had come for the medicine, for the Xenari, and he would have to stand between them. "Do you think I'm ready for this?" James asked quietly, not really expecting an answer but needing to hear something. He needed something to steady his nerves. Zyra turned to face him, her gaze intense. "You are ready because you have no choice. But remember, this power you have, it is not a weapon. You must use it carefully. If you let it consume you, it will destroy you." James swallowed, trying to steady his breath. He could feel the power thrumming just beneath his skin, like a wave waiting to crash. "I don't want to lose myself," he said, almost pleading, the weight of his words pressing down on him. Zyra reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "You won't, but you must remember what you're fighting for. You're not fighting for power or glory. You're fighting to protect what you care about. That is what will keep you grounded." For a moment, James didn't know what to say. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a fighter. He had been a scientist, an explorer, someone who looked for answers in the stars. But now, here he was, standing on the edge of something that felt bigger than anything he had ever faced. He had no choice but to rise to the occasion. The Vreks wouldn't wait, and neither could he. The rumble of the approaching ship grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath his feet. The Vreks were almost here. James felt his muscles tense as he prepared for the battle. He was ready in some ways, but in other ways he felt uncertain, unsure if he could control the power inside him. It was like a wild animal, eager to break free, and he wasn't sure if he could tame it. Zyra's voice broke through his thoughts. "There are others coming. We must prepare." James nodded and turned toward the inner chambers of the medical facility. He didn't know exactly what he was supposed to do, but he knew that staying here, watching the ship, wouldn't get him anywhere. They needed to be ready. The Vreks wouldn't take this world without a fight, and James wasn't about to let them win. As he moved toward the armory, Zyra by his side, James couldn't shake the feeling that everything was changing. He had already begun to change physically and mentally, and now the world around him was shifting too. He had once thought of himself as just a man, a human, someone with limits, but now those limits had been erased. What would it mean for him to fight like this, with so much power at his disposal? The armory was a quiet place, filled with weapons of all shapes and sizes, none of which James had ever seen before. The Zonari were not a warlike people, but their technology was far beyond anything James had encountered. The weapons were sleek, streamlined, and made for precision. There was a calm efficiency to everything here, as though the Zonari had prepared for battles they never hoped to fight. Zyra led James to a table where a variety of devices were laid out. One was a sleek metallic arm guard, light but solid, with intricate designs etched into its surface. Another was a small handheld device, its purpose unclear. "You will need this," Jaira said, picking up the arm guard and slipping it over James's forearm. It adjusted to his size automatically, as though it had been made just for him. "It will enhance your strength and protect you during the fight. It's not enough to rely on your enhanced abilities alone. You must protect yourself." James didn't argue. He slipped the guard on and flexed his arm, feeling the strength surge through him. The power was there, almost too much of it, but as he looked at Jaira, he knew she was right. He couldn't just rely on his new abilities. He had to be smart, use everything at his disposal. Jaira then picked up the small handheld device and handed it to James. "This will allow you to communicate with us during the fight," she explained. "If things get too intense, you can call for backup. Don't hesitate to use it if you need help." James nodded, taking the device. He was still unsure of himself, but there was no time to dwell on doubts. The Vreks were almost here, and he had to fight. For the Zanari, for the world he had come to care for, and for himself. As they made their way back to the observation deck, the Vreks ship had already begun to descend, landing just outside the facility's perimeter. James could see the figures emerging from the ship, tall, armored, and imposing. The Vreks were known for their strength and brutality, and their technology was formidable. They were here to take what they wanted, and nothing would stop them. Jaira turned to James, her expression serious. "This is it. Are you ready?" James didn't answer immediately. He was scared. There was no denying that. But as he looked at Jaira, at the world that needed protection, something inside him stirred. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for something bigger than himself. "I'm ready," James said, his voice firm. "Let's do this." With a final nod, Jaira activated a control panel, and the doors leading out to the battlefield opened. The cold air hit James like a wave, and he felt the full weight of the moment. There was no turning back now. The Vreks were waiting for them, and James wasn't sure what would happen when the first blast was fired. But he was ready. He stepped forward, his body and mind locked into a singular focus. He wasn't just human anymore. He was something else, something more. And that something would fight.